We have Bill Hendershaw. Next to him we have Stuart McClellan, Paul Culler, Bruce Goodin, and Ben Mohlenhoff. How did you keep going in the early days?
Barely.
Barely. Because there wasn't a lot of work in Florida.
Well, we had a board of directors that were very supportive, and they grilled me one night a month, and I always, wanted to put on the best that we could do, but I didn't want to let lack of ethics and integrity get involved. So they were rather harsh, but that was good because that forced us to do things.
Right.
And I think this thing with membrane softening that we originated, this started after that group of people had been bought out by a member of one of the Saudi families, the Jamjuns.
How did you come up with the idea of having these little self-contained units of, fairly low daily production?
The biggest mistakes BTI ever made was not really chasing that into the home market, because we were taking an industrial look at it. And if you look at a picture of a 007, you can see the thread of an industrial appearing rather than nice rounded corners and the under the sink units you see. But that was really all these homes in Jeddah and Dhahran over in that, more than in Riyadh, the water was just terrible, and they were building these mansions, and so they had the 007s and the 008s, and we were able to kind of, quotation marks, mass produce those, really for the Middle Eastern market.
How did you originally get involved in the Middle East?
I guess the first job was the plants we built for
Medina and
Riyadh.
Actually, we had somebody we met at one of the trade shows with regard to the orchids.
Yeah, is that where it's at?
Marie Selby Gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And we were selling small reverse osmosis units to the orchid growers.
Yeah, Everglades Orchid. The guy was head of the Orchid Association.
And so that's how one of the Saudis got wind of us a little bit and just progressed from there.
Now, Ben, you had to, these guys did their magic tricks. You had to go and actually service these things.
Yes, I did a couple of trips over, and it was very interesting, as they were alluding, as Paul was alluding, that they didn't take care of the units. You'd go out on a service visit, a unit had been in place for 2 months or 3 months and that kind of stuff, and they'd be complaining it wasn't working, and you'd find that they had closed the concentrate valve completely because they discovered it would make a little bit more water, but it was only a very short period of time that it made that, and then it died, And then you'd explain to them what they'd done wrong, and then they would go, well, no, I didn't do that. Well, how did that valve get closed? You were too dumb to even open it back up.
We should have had an orifice in there.
Yes, that would have, actually, I think we eventually did resolve by putting orifices in to take that temptation away.
Where was it, in Dhahran they put you out and you woke up and the goat was eating your blanket?
Yes, I was, the accommodations were Spartan to say the least. And there was no door on the building that I was staying on, and woke up and there was a goat in the room with me, and he felt that the blanket looked like lunch. But yeah.
When you started Basic Technologies, companies like Roga and Hydronautics and Virogenics were also in the same business and making their own membranes. Was it hard for Basic to compete in that market when you had companies that were actually making their own membranes competing against you?
And building their own system.
And building their own systems, yeah.
In a vertical manner. And we always, Dow, Film Tech, in the later years, didn't believe in vertical integration and building their own systems, and they, treated membrane as a commodity. So that's one thing that led us to Film Tech, because Roga, they would build big systems themselves. They were trying to wear both hats,
Right.
as it was Envirogenics.
DuPont really was another one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They didn't want to be, they wanted somebody between them and the end user.
Right.
To take the liability risk.
Bill, if there was one project that you did while at Basic Technologies that was either the most interesting or the most challenging or the most fun, which one would you pick?
Well, Venice, the expansion of Venice we put in two Dow hollow fiber skids expanding the DuPont. It was interesting because we got to have to use a common cleaning system.
Stuart, what about you? What was your
Probably
most
working
memorable project?
Sanibel, because we originally remembraned the three original trains with FilmTech membrane, and there's an interesting story about how FilmTech got in there. I don't know if you remember this, but Bill here convinced the user to install Brand X, and they installed Brand X membrane to run alongside the original hydronautic CA membrane, and when it came to replacing the hydronautics membrane, they were up to around 550 psi for the heat pressure required to maintain flow. And Brand X was basically where it started from day one. So they had a first-hand experience on using thin film composites, and so that was really the first large thin film composite.
if I had to pick one that I found kind of interesting was Bernac Protos, where we had to treat, they basically had a reservoir that they caught rainwater in and that stuff that had everything, including alligators living in it. And we put in a UF unit and then, an RO unit and that kind of stuff. And this was a large hydroponic cucumber farm, basically, is what they were.
Herbless cucumber.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
long European.
Yeah, the European
Seedless.
cucumbers and that, but at any rate, they desperately had to have their water, and they were running out of water. And I can remember I would get up in the middle of the night because the UF unit kept wanting to clog and that stuff, so I'd be doing back flushes at 2 o'clock in the morning and the dogs chasing me through the fields and that stuff. It was quite memorable, but eventually we got it straightened out and it ran pretty well.
How many years was Basic Technologies in business totally?
September 23rd, 1974 to October 3rd, 1980.
6.
1986. Thank you for coming.